Hello students. This is actually the 21st session in unit 2nd of business economics subject for BCom class. In this class actually we are going to have a revision. We will have one revision of the units from 9th unit to 20th unit. Okay, what we have studied in the particular unit, actually this is the second unit where you have studied lots of concepts, lots of theories from law of diminishing marginal utility to the types of elasticity. So let us see in the ninth session, ninth class, what we have studied. In the ninth session, we have studied about law of diminishing marginal utility. In that particular session, you may remember that we have discussed about the meaning of utility. You know that the meaning of utility is wants satisfying power, or you can say it is a power of the commodity to satisfy human wants. And we have also studied about the types of utility like total utility, marginal utility, average utility and all. The total utility means it is total sum of the utility. Utility which is derived from the commodity A, B, C, etc. So up to nth unit what we have consumed in sum or else in total is total utility. Marginal means additional utility. It is an additional utility. Then we have to discuss about the statement of the law. The law states that other thing remaining same or ceteris paribus. According to law of diminishing marginal utility, it states that other thing remaining same or ceteris paribus. When we consume more and more unit of the commodity, the utility, the marginal utility which is derived from the same commodity goes on diminishing. Clear? So this is a statement. Later on we have to develop one illustration, our own example, to explain about the law of diminishing marginal utility. You can give an example of consumption of apple, the second one, third, like that. Then you have to say how the total utility in numbers and at the same time how marginal utility reaction. Then we have to develop one schedule. The schedule means it is a tabular expression of the illustration. Then the next one is a diagram. So when we go with the diagrams, we have to explain with the diagram. Then the assumptions of law of diminishing marginal utility, especially the assumption of marginal utility is, you may remember the assumptions like same quantity, same quality, same unit, then the consumer should be very much rational. Then you may remember the marginal utility of money remain constant, there is no change in income, there is no change in person. So there are number of assumptions in law of diminishing marginal utility, and the last one is limitations. In the limitations part, actually we have discussed 5 limitations, but in the limitations part you should know the application of the theory. Actually you should know the application of the theory. If there is change in income, the theory will be false. If there is change in the unit or quantity, then the theory becomes a false theory. And you can also state that if the utility of the money doesn't remain constant, then also the theory doesn't work. So these are the limitations of law of diminishing marginal utility. So when you write this concept at the final end or else final or end point, you should remember the contents, what and all you have studied. So remember, you should write the meaning of utility, then the types of utility, you have to state a law, then you go for your own illustration, schedule and diagram. And immediately after the diagram, you should know some of the important parts in the diagram and your illustration. One is when the total utility is maximum, marginal utility is 0. When total utility is falling, marginal utility is negative. And the next one is when the total utility is increasing, then only you can see it is in the positive line. So when the total utility is falling means it is called as disutility. So likewise we have discussed the important areas that you should remember and you should add in your answers. Then we have assumptions, set of assumptions, then limitations. Then after this, in the 10th session, actually we have actually studied about the exceptions of law of demand. The exceptions of law of demand, maybe it is like hobbies. For example, if we are having a hobbies of collecting coins and some antique hobbies of collections of coins or some historical items, and you can also say the stamp collections and such areas, that marginal utility doesn't apply actually. And the second one is drunkards. We have discussed in the class, you may remember. So drunkards, even though they can't stand in their own leg by drinking and drinking, if you ask if you go and ask with them, do you want one more, they will say yes. So you can say that it doesn't apply for drunkards, and it doesn't apply for the people who is mice enough. Then doesn't apply for music and poetry and the hobbies like reading also. And ultimately it doesn't apply for money. Okay, so this is actually the exceptions of law of law of diminishing marginal utility. And when we discuss about the uses of law of diminishing marginal utility, we can see that the uses in terms of it is useful for the customer, and it is also useful for the producer to set the maximum profit. And the last one is it is also useful for the government to do some policies and to provide the social justice. Okay, this is actually exceptions and uses of law of diminishing marginal utility. And the next one is in the 11th session we have studied about law of demand. So law of demand is actually, we know in the particular session we have studied about the meaning, definition and types of demand and demand function. Especially demand, when we say or when we discuss about demand, we should know that demand means it is a desire backed by ability and willingness to pay for the commodity. Okay, then we have certain sets of assumption. We should develop one demand schedule. When you do a demand schedule and demand curve, remember that demand curve is having negative slope, and we have to discuss about the reasons for downward slope of demand curve. Then in the 12th session we have discussed the exceptions of law of demand. So in the exceptions of law of demand, we have discussed some 7 points. First one is it doesn't apply for inferior goods. And demonstration effect. Demonstration effect in the sense maybe the costliest goods. It doesn't apply for the case of costliest goods. Though the price of the jewelers or the esteemed car is high, the demand is also high. Then ignorance of consumer, and the fourth one is when the commodity is very less supply. Then during the time of depression, speculation and out of fashion cases, demand theory will not apply. So this is actually the exceptions of law of demand. Then in the 13th session we have discussed about the determinants of demand. Dear students, remember when you are going to write about the determinants of demand, you should remember the demand function. There will be two types of demand function, individual and market demand function. After that you should go for determinants of demand. Determinants of demand includes demand for the commodity, given commodity, and the price of the given commodity, then prices of the related goods, income of the individual consumer, taste, preference, and then change in price or expectations in future price, then change in the size and composition of people, season, weather, distribution of income, so many things which may determine the demand. And in the 14th session we have discussed about increasing and decreasing demand. So dear students, it is actually easiest parts increasing and decreasing demand, but you should know that when the demand curve increases, it shifts into right. When it is decreases, it shifts into left. And you have to see if it is and change in equilibrium point when it is increased or decreased. That you have to show in a diagram. It is very easy. You can follow from the class. Then the 15th session we have discussed about the elasticity of demand. So elasticity of demand, actually where we have studied how the demand is changed according to change in the price. When we study about demand theory, we will study only the relations, negative, but the elasticity of demand helps us to study about the extent of change. It is actually helps us to extent of change, and it is also helps to study the direction or magnitude of change in the variables. Then there are different methods are there in measuring elasticity. The first one is total outlay or expenditure method. Total expenditure method means it is measured with the help of total expenditure incurred by the household on the purchase of the commodity. Then we have a formula for that, that is TQ, it is equal to P into Q. Okay. Then the next one is percentage method. Percentage elasticity of demand can be measured with the help of percentages, or else you can say proportionates. So according to this method, percentage change in price is compared with percentage change in demand. And here also we have a formula, that is EP, it is equal to percentage change in quantity demand divided by percentage change in price. And the next method is point elasticity. Point elasticity of demand is measured on the basis of points in the demand curve. So it is actually measured the each points of the demand curve. Then the last one is arc method. Arc method is measures the elasticity of demand by taking average of original and new prices and the quantity and the quantities. So this is actually the 4 important types of measuring elasticity. Then in the next 17th session we have discussed about the factors determining elasticity of demand. So the different factors like the nature of the commodity, substitutes, and the third one is number of uses of the commodity, postponement, raw materials and finished goods, price level, income level, habits, nature of expenditure, distribution of income, influence of diminishing marginal utility, influence on consumer surplus, joint demand, time. So etc. is discussed as a major factor which is determining elasticity of demand. So we have nearly 14 points here we have discussed during the class. Then the next one is the types of elasticity. The first one is income elasticity. So income elasticity of demand refers to, it expresses the change in consumer demand for a good by change in its income. Okay, change in consumer demand with respect to change in income. So the formula comes like percentage change in quantity demand divided by percentage change in income. Then the next one we have studied about the cross elasticity. Cross elasticity is especially about the substitute goods. So it is change in the demand for a commodity with relation to change in price of another product. Clear? Change in the demand for good X with relation to change in the price of good Y. That must be substitute goods. Okay. So in the last one, in the 20th session, we have discussed about the promotional elasticity. Promotional elasticity you can also say as advertisement elasticity. Change in the demand for the commodity by change in advertisements. Okay, these are the important topics that we have discussed in the given unit second. So this is a reference of the concerned topic. You can refer these books or any websites for this units. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience listening.